Okay, hey everybody, and welcome to another episode of On the Wrist from Off the Cuff. Today we have an awesome little piece for you from Seiko. So, a little bit about Seiko. If you didn't know, they were founded in 1881. They are Japanese in origin and now have factories throughout Asia. They cover all market segments from entry level to extremely high end. So, kind of this overall subject that we're going to talk about today, which really inspired this video and this particular watch purchase for me, is the Seiko Instruments VK Meca-Quartz movement. So, there's basically been kind of a boom going on with micro brands recently, and you'll see, you know, a bunch of different micro brands with kind of these very classic vintage automobile themed chronographs that are using this quote-unquote Meca-Quartz movement. And I saw the videos, I saw the reviews, I thought, how cool, you know. I think it's just a really cool piece with some great technology. I did some digging, and I kind of got even more and more intrigued. So it kind of set me on this mission to find, okay, well, if Seiko's making these movements, you know, aftermarket, well, what are some of their pieces that they offer, right? And at what price point? So, you know, especially with, you know, because out of curiosity, you know, I definitely like those watches, but some of them are very expensive, you know, notably, you know, the Autodromo Prototipo, they have a special edition that's over $700. So for me to kind of just, you know, out of a kind of novelty idea to check out this movement and kind of spend that much money, wasn't really ready to do that. So I think it was really cool to get my hands on this piece here from Seiko, and now I'm pretty in love with the movement, and when you find out how much I paid for this, I think it just makes it all the better. So this particular model is the SSB003. It has a Panda dial, and it does use the Meca-Quartz movement. The retail price is about $250, but you won't find it anywhere for $250. This is, everywhere you look all day, you'll find this watch for about anywhere between $99 to $150. So not a hugely popular piece, but I think it definitely dresses up really nicely. And I did add a leather strap to it, which we'll cover a little bit later in the video. So let's go ahead and take a closer look. All right, so go over the dimensions a bit here. This is a 40 millimeter watch, which is great. Very nice classic proportions there. It's 11 millimeters tall, which is relatively slim, you know, especially for a chronograph. It's stainless steel, you know, it's mostly polished. But it does have a little bit of brushing. You can see kind of on the top of the case there around the lugs. So the crystal is, you know, of course, Seiko's Hardlex mineral crystal, and it's flat. The bezel is highly polished. It has a non-screw down, unsound crown, so very sterile from that perspective, but still finely executed. The movement is the Meca-Quartz Seiko 6T63 movement. So, you know, basically in a nutshell, it uses quartz timing, but it has mechanical chrono action. So as you can see, it's actually engaged right now. So gives you a little bit of visual interest while I talk about this watch. So basically, the sweep there is at a 5th second interval, so it actually lines up to those little tick marks. Let's say if I was to stop it, as you can see, it lines up there from, it's hard to get the angle on the camera versus with my eye, but you can get a look there that it stops pretty precisely. So Very nice sweep on there. Very cool. And basically, there's a multi-headed lever that disengages when I want to reset, which I'll let it run a little bit before I reset so you can get a better look. And it'll actually reset those hands because it disengages the gears, and it snaps back basically to instant 0 versus sweeping back to 0 like you would see on other quartz chronographs. So just to kind of show you what that looks like, I'll let it run a little bit more so you get a nice look at it. So let's say we stop, and then you can see the hands, right? You can see the second counter, then you actually also have the minute counter there. But when I press this, nice mechanical snap back. So, you know, very cool piece. I gotta say, it's really addictive just kind of playing with this and letting it run and snapping it back and just kind of chiming things. It's a fun piece, I gotta say, and then this movement is addictive. So basically, some other really cool details I found out is the actual chrono mechanism consists of over 20 individual parts, and it's basically very similar to a traditional mechanical chronograph gear train. So it's very cool, and of course it's in-house from Seiko, and it's based on, you know, you guys should already know Seiko has a very illustrious history when it comes to chronographs. You know, one of the first automatic mechanical chronographs, as well as you know, one of the first quartz analog chronographs, right? So instead of having the digital display to actually have the arms and everything like that, they definitely have a rich history. So really, really cool. And I mean, really, you know, if you think about it, this is an in-house piece, so that's just great. As far as the case back goes, we'll snap it back. Boom. Case back, you know, pretty standard issue. It's just a solid case back, and it has some etching on it. Nothing to write home about. And then the indices, as you can see, they are applied, they're reflective, no loom or anything like that, and then all the other information is printed. The dial is not white. Sometimes you might think it's white in pictures, but it's actually a silver sunbrush finish, a nice pale silver. So it's kind of, I think it's even better than having, you know, kind of a plain Panda dial that's gonna just be kind of matte or glossy white. This just kind of adds some dimension to it. So I think that's really cool and really eye-catching, you know. So very nice, especially in that Panda theme. So, and then it has the date, as you can see, very nicely nestled at the 4.5 position. So functional from that standpoint. You know, and normally when you have a chronograph, it's hard to fit a date in there. So it was nice that they at least fit it in a spot where it wasn't going to bother anything, and held some nice symmetry. You know, from farther away, it's, you know, still flows nicely. I think up close, you kind of may over-examine it, and yeah, there's a little bit of contrast between the silver dial and the white date disc. But hey, you know, $99 watch here. So, as you can also see, it has painted hands and polished hands. So, you know, of course, the red contrast hands for the chrono hands. And here you have the different subdials. Here's a 24-hour counter. And then here's the running seconds. And then the actual hour and minute hands are polished with like a black strip down them. So, it's a nice compromise for legibility. They couldn't just make them polished because, of course, the dial is a silver sunray dial, and they couldn't just make them black because it's a Panda dial, and the hands are going to sweep over those black subdials at some point. So, you know, I think it's still nice and readable for sure. There's no loom on this watch, which is, you know, it is what it is. I wouldn't knock the watch because it doesn't have loom. You know, it's an automotive theme. It's not a diver or anything like that. So don't really see the purpose for it having loom, although it would have been nice, especially on the hands. The lugs are 20 millimeters. Very nice, classical sizing here. The OEM bracelet that this came with is hollow stainless steel. You know, I didn't even size the bracelet. It's a really old school bracelet. I pretty much got this with the intent of immediately putting it on a vintage rally style strap, which I've done here, as you can see. And this is actually a nice strap from B&R. So, and it's a saddle brown vintage style rally strap. And we'll take a look at the back here. You can see it's signed by... Okay. Try to get it to focus there. There you go. So B&R bands, if you want to check them out, I think they have really nicely executed vintage style straps. As you can see, thickness is nice, complements the case well. Not too thick or bulky, but not super thin, so it gives you a nice feel of quality there. And let's get this bad boy on the wrist. All right, so as you can see, I think it really fits my 7¼ inch wrist really well. You know, I think in the hand, it did appear small initially, especially because the dial, you know, it's not like the dial really pushes out to the edge of the case. You know, there's a relatively thick bezel there. So I think initially I felt it was a little bit small, but after wearing it, I gotta say now it's kind of one of my go-to pieces. You know, one, it's quartz, so I don't have to ever worry about setting it. And two, it just has this great appeal to it. You know, the classic Panda dial, the vintage racing strap. I mean, talk about bang per buck. I mean, I just get so much enjoyment out of this watch. And it blows my mind, you know, because it's so much cheaper than so many other of the watches that I have. So just really impressed and really couldn't be more happy with this piece. And especially since I was just really curious about this, you know, these VK movements that Seiko Instruments comes out with that are, you know, basically they're based on this particular movement. And of course aftermarket they have a couple other options and stuff like that. Just a couple different other dial configurations that aren't necessarily a one-to-one. But this particular movement, the 6T63, is pretty much a one-to-one match with the VK63 that you'll find as far as the dial layout and all the features of the movement. So very cool. I'll get a little wristy here while I talk a little bit, you know, on my closing thoughts. So on wrist, this watch wears very comfortably. You know, it may be, you know, like I said before, maybe a little bit small in hand, but really perfect on the wrist. It has a really great vintage racing aesthetic. And, you know, the chrono action is pretty addictive. So we'll just pop that up one more time because honestly, that's one of the things that I watch for when I watch other reviews on these watches, on these particular movements. You know, I searched Seiko Meca-Quartz and all that, and just try to find watches that review them with the action so I can know that this particular watch has the movement I'm looking for. And it's just a really nice mechanical, you know, real crisp feeling to it. So really, really cool. I just, you know, I'm sorry to gush about this piece, but it's really nice. I really enjoy it. So for this particular model, there are a few different variations. There's a black dial, a white dial that's all white, a blue dial, and then there's also even like a two-tone silver and gold model. And then of course there's bracelet variants and then strap variants, just kind of basic black leather strap or stainless steel bracelet. And honestly, from my quick search, I found that the ones with the leather strap were actually listed a little bit higher than the ones with the steel bracelet. So I just picked the one with the steel bracelet and just pulled it off immediately and put a leather strap on it anyway. So saved a little bit of money, and you know, now I have this relatively funky, cool, vintage looking strap for it, just in case I ever want to flip it or anything like that. So, you know, comparable models, of course, kind of like we touched on, you know, it's kind of this Meca-Quartz renaissance is happening right now for a lot of micro brands. You know, just to name a few: Autodromo, Belmodo, Stratton. You know, they have a bunch of VK powered automotive themed chronographs, and they're all very cool, and they've all caught my eye, and they've really piqued my interest. But I'm just, you know, as a kind of a collector, you know, I have a lot of automatic pieces, and I just kind of had to know what all the fuss was about when it comes to the Meca-Quartz movement. So, you know, not to discredit any of those brands, I still think those are probably a great value proposition, and I do look forward to eventually getting a couple of those watches in my stable. But I think having the experience with this piece really, you know, seals the deal for me on this movement, and I can see why there's a lot of companies that are charging a premium for it. It's a really good, you know, really feature-rich movement for not a lot of money. So it's just really, really great. This watch is really just, you know, a fraction of the cost of a lot of the micro brands that are using this same movement. And of course, this is an in-house spec, right? This is a Seiko movement and a Seiko watch. So that's just, you know, horologically, just gives it a little bit of significance. I mean, this particular model is literally the model pictured in the 6T63 user manual, right? So when you open up your Seiko user manual, you know, normally if you're looking at a movement manual, it'll just kind of have a picture of whatever generic watch, right? This is the actual watch in that manual. So that's just a cool little tidbit, you know, maybe 20, 30 years from now, that will be, you know, maybe this model will, you know, will be cool and be sought after. Who knows? That's not really why I buy watches, but, you know, who knows, right? Maybe after this video, you guys will all go out and go grab yourselves a Meca-Quartz. It's just so cool. All right. So, I mean, really the bottom line is it's a lot of fun. This is a fun watch I enjoy wearing. It's stylish, you know, and it's in an affordable package. What more can you ask for? So, you know, great piece. Couldn't be happier with it. And, you know, the price is just what makes it that much sweeter. So, if you guys like the video, please hit like. If you haven't already, please subscribe. And if you have any comments, you know, let me know what you think in the comments below. Thanks, guys. Bye.